Hello and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host Bryan. We're going to wrap up this week of Sonic Apocalypse, diving into what I'm going to imagine is not quite as heavy or gritty or dreary or depressing as some of the other apocalyptic sounds we've heard this week. We have some Gloryhammer coming in today with some Apocalypse 1992 off of their Space 1992 Rise of the Chaos Wizards album. I mean, this is going to be power metal. This is going to be fun. This is going to be wild and cheesy. At least that's where my expectations are at. Let's dive into it and see what Gloryhammer is bringing to the table today. Ooh. Getting a little playful with those stingers. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Symphonic element, give it a little bit of extra weight. Curiosity slinking in here.
And lo, led by the valiant hero Angus MacFife the forces of justice assembled their armies in the skies above Mars in preparation for the epic battle against the demon horde. But on planet Earth, a far more sinister machination was afoot. In the dwarven caverns beneath the mighty citadel of Dundee, the evil wizard Zargathrax began to recite the dread incantation which would...
The rolled R's are killing me.
...portal to the galactic nexus, as foretold in the dark prophecy of Anstruther countless centuries ago. As he placed the Goblin King's crystal key into the altar before him, ancient runes began to glow on the surface of the portal. Soon the gateway would open, and the Elder God Corviliath of the 18th Hell Dimension would be unleashed onto the galaxy. The countdown to universal annihilation had begun!
Shepherd tone, or were we actually continuously rising there? So we have the French horns on the side giving this big sound, but a lot of the orchestration is just playing the guitar riff. Really gives it that extra meatiness. There we go. Nice vocal stacks here. intensity through most of this.
Let battle commence. It's the rage, the cosmic rage of astral dwarfs from Aberdeen. From their minds they will
A lot of texture layering going on here.
rage of the dwarfs is tonight. It's the rage, the cosmic rage of astral dwarfs from Aberdeen. From their minds they will arise and fight. The rage of the dwarfs is tonight.
Ooh, even with the metric mod there with the triplets? Yeah. A very powerful song, which I expect from this genre, but there's tinges of darkness in it as well. Makes it feel large in scope while still having like an element of danger to it. The choir is a nice choice here too. That works well.
My ancestral demon army will raid a cosmic sphere and liberate the multiverse from slavery and fear. With the power of the crystal from an ancient galaxy, the force of evil will prevail in Eastman destiny. Fly high through apocalypse skies, fight for the world we must save.
Yeah, okay.
Like tears of a unicorn lost in the rain, chaos will triumph this day. Fly high through apocalypse skies, fight for the world we must save.
The vocals always kick in on the downbeat, but snares on 2 and 4. Every time this chorus is kicked in, I don't know to headbang on 1 or on even numbers or odd numbers.
From the case beneath the knee, ancient Terminator rise, a messenger to the war in the stars, currently up his line.
Interesting. A little off kilter of a rhythm mixed with a feeling of unease, unknowing.
Deep inside the hoodsman, there lies a secret heart. Barbarian is a cyborg-powered pioneer transtar. For centuries, immortal hero quests in time and space. But now we must make sacrifice to save the human race. The only way to save the galaxy is to
Very big and triumphant here.
faster than a laser bullet, Hoodsman flies to fight. He detonates his nuclear, destroys a human life. Fly high through apocalypse skies, fight for the world we must save. Like tears of a unicorn lost in the rain, chaos will triumph this day. Fly high through apocalypse.
Modulation here, a variation on the chorus to wrap this up, presumably.
Like tears of a unicorn lost in the rain, chaos will triumph this day. Apocalypse.
Bringing back the tension. Lots of emotions in this.
With a thunderous implosion, the earth was vaporized, tearing a dimensional rift in the heavens. Using its last shards of power
a cool momentary harmonic shift in that final moment. Right before the choir hits came in, there's an ascending line in the guitars. Yeah. Hmm. All right. This is pretty much what I expect from Gloryhammer. They don't really break too much of the mold in this track. It's big, it's epic, it's uh, powerful, it's super groovy, it goes down smooth throughout. And it's just a type of, I mean, it's just, the thing is, too, something about Gloryhammer, it's a bit of their clean production, it's a bit of their very palatable sounds. Generally, it's the epic vastness that they have in their harmonic resonance. Everything about it always feels like high fantasy to me, even though I actually don't know if this is high fantasy or not, but it always has that feeling to it. Like as close as metal can get to that type of like class and air and just like pristine elements of like the high fantasy storytelling genre that you would find in novels or film or something like that. And it's everything about their coloring, their character, the way that they craft their sounds, and this song absolutely leans into that very well. Now, this song also does something interesting that I've heard in a couple of Gloryhammer songs, but tends to be used for effect rather than what I would consider their core sounds. Typically, if there's like some cheesy power metal, just very uplifting, big belted vibrato notes, epic sound and scale in the guitars, that to me is Gloryhammer's bread and butter. But this adds something else to that. There's darkness in this tension, unease, and a feeling of unexpectedness, of not knowing what's around the corner. Not all at once, of course. These are peppered in at different parts of the song. I'm going to assume it's part of the storytelling, different sections. You listen to the lyrics, and these emotions popping up in the music match what's happening in the story. But yeah, I don't hear a lot of Gloryhammer. And granted, a lot of the Gloryhammer I've heard is singles. I think this is one of the few times that I haven't had a music video to accompany the song. Um, so it may be that I'm just getting some more of the, palatable, single, popular things. And this is one of the tracks that has a bit more density. I also think this is the longest Gloryhammer song I've heard too. So that might be something. And it is an album ender. So that might be another reason to add in some of this emotional weight. But I do find that it helps divvy up and create space in different parts of their songs because, I mean, I'll be honest, like I said, Gloryhammer has a distinct sound. I'm not going to say that I've heard every single Gloryhammer just because I've heard a handful of tracks, but I do know what I'm in store for when they get brought up. And that is, as usual, double-edged sword. Yeah, comfortable, know what you're getting in store for, but at the same time, it can also be a little routine at times. And I think that's one of the things that the emotional peppering in this track helps to get away from and helps to create, especially in this case, a 10-minute song almost that doesn't feel like the same thing over and over, because we certainly do spend a lot of time in their core sound, whether it's the main verse or the chorus that we spend a lot of time with, or even the bridge. A lot of this just has that very epic Gloryhammer cheesy sound. And I mean, if it was just that for 10 minutes, I don't know that I would have been as receptive to it. It's the little ways that they go about ensuring that there's contrast and dynamic to the song on, in this case, in the emotional range. But I also like how it doesn't completely change the sound of the song either. As I mentioned, geez, what was this, like 4 or 5 minutes in? I was like, oh, it's still grand, it's still epic, but there's darkness brewing underneath it now. And it's not just like, because some bands will be like, we're doing this and now we're doing this totally different idea, changing up the emotional landscape by changing everything. Gloryhammer, in this song at least, is ensuring that their core sound, that there is a thread that's pulled between every section of this song. They might add in something to adjust it, to color it, sort of like choosing a base color for a painting and then adding in other colors to create your palette based off of, your core um, pigment that you're wanting to use. And so that's kind of what happens here. Everything is definitely this, Gloryhammer style of power metal. But what if we put in a little bit of darkness? What if we put in uncertainty? What if we mixed it with danger or something like that? And so you get this big, powerful power metal feeling, very epic and vast throughout. But it's not always something that feels adventurous. Sometimes it brings in other emotions, and I really like that. It keeps it feeling cohesive, but allows it to not become stagnant for the entirety of its runtime. But there is also this other thing we need to talk about here, which is spoken word. I wasn't super sold on this at the beginning. I think primarily because the song hadn't really started yet. We had the intro, and it was an orchestral style intro. We started off with like drums, and we brought in the guitars and the horns and the strings. And like as we started to add things, I was like, okay, this is kind of neat. I like where this is going. What's happening here? And then that all sort of simmers down, and we just get this snare roll and some vocals, and we slowly add instruments back in, but it's just a lot of spoken word stuff. And this probably makes sense if you listen to the whole album and you are there for the lyrics, for the story, because this is a concept album. Maybe this is a concept band. Y'all can correct me on that if I'm wrong. I kind of get the feeling it is. But regardless, this album is conceptual, and conceptual through its storytelling. So maybe just having come off of whatever the prior track was, simmering things down and going for a spoken word lore dump narration thing is the right way to go about handling this. But as an isolated experience, I was just getting into this, and then we reduced the energy and then just talked to me for a minute. And that felt a bit awkward. Though, again, I will say it's probably just because this doesn't work as an isolated track as well as it works within the context of the album. But this actually shows up a couple more times too. This isn't just a one-off to do at the beginning. This narrator comes in a couple of times and provides this spoken word dialogue. I'm looking forward to getting to the lyrics on this one. I do have a little bit of context to the album leading up to this point, so that should help a little bit with my understanding of it. But it just seems like there's a lot of points in here where they're like, okay, we don't want to sing the story anymore. We want to tell you a lot of words at one time. And that's an interesting thing to do in the context of music. And I could go, this feels like a big tangent. I feel like I need a separate video about spoken word in musical ideas. But I think just on the cover of it, just to like give a surface level thing about where I'm going here, spoken word doesn't really abide by metric ideas. It can. In this case, I don't think it does. It doesn't abide by harmonic or melodic ideas either. It ditches the rhythmic and the melodic and focuses entirely on texture and context. Its purpose is presumably to give you a bunch of words, to kind of push the music aside and say, we're going to do something a little bit less musical here. We're not singing, we're not screaming, we're getting rid of meter, we're getting rid of pitch, and we're just focusing on what the words are. And it kind of dismisses the musical side for an informational side. And I find that really interesting. It would be like, you're reading a novel, and then it just comes to a point where the author just decides that words aren't enough, and you have like 10 pages of graphic novel before going back to just text. I'm sure it's been done before. It's actually, now that I think about it, it's akin to like children's picture books, but the thing is it's still kind of unexpected if you have a dense novel and for the last 10 hours you've been reading just words. Throwing in pictures in there would be a bit of a deviation from that. And I think that's what makes this so interesting to me. Even the music backs down in most of these sections, kind of becomes background music, creating an atmosphere, but not really doing anything melodic, not pushing the song forward. It's background music. It's there to provide the atmosphere and nothing more. Whereas every other part of this song is not just informing the moment, but also pushing to the next idea. The chord progresses, the melody progresses. Rhythmically, we might have a consistency, but at the end of every 4 bars, we're going to have some sort of punctuating idea to progress the song forward. A lot of music is about how do we get from one idea to the next? How do we make sure that this doesn't feel boring in any way? Background music is the opposite. It's trying to do very little. It's trying to stand still so that whatever's accompanying it can have the focus. And I find that to be a really interesting decision to do the spoken word narration thing so many times on this track. The instrumentation is really the last thing, and I don't know that there's a lot here that I want to touch on. I don't necessarily want to use the word mundane. No, I definitely don't want to use mundane. I feel like that's got too much negative. Iteration. This is definitely iterative writing. I don't hear anything here on the metal side or the orchestral side that really stands out as something fresh and new. A lot of it is using the sounds of power metal and the sounds of romantic era classical in order to create these feelings, these moods more than anything else. The riffs on here are pretty straightforward. There's a lot of pedal tone writing for the first 75%, and then some sort of punctuating idea at the last quarter of the phrase before starting the whole thing again. A lot of the orchestration usually does the same thing, but just ignores the pedal tone. Anytime the guitar will change notes away from the pedal, that's when you'll hear the orchestration. Sometimes that's just a couple of notes, so you get these stingers. But like at the end of a phrase, when we actually have a moving idea, the orchestration will accompany that. I find that that's quite effective at creating a sound, but compositionally is a bit routine. I would have liked a little bit more diversity there, but that's just me. And as usual, wanting more classical writing anytime there's classical instrumentation, which isn't really fair to the artists. I just don't hear a lot of that, and I love it when I do. But even looking at when the strings and horns get to take the lead away from the metallic side, a lot of it is, like I said, very iterative romantic era writing to create this feeling of vastness and largeness. The horns, particularly the French horns and the tuba, really help elevate this sound. It sells it. We've heard these two instruments used a lot in epic music. And the chord progressions and melodic movement that we hear in these instruments are also stuff that we typically hear with vast, large-scale epic sounds. Again, not necessarily breaking the mold, but certainly using these ideas to great effect. And when paired with the metal, you have the high intensity, you have the speed, you have the energy mixed with all of this vastness and epicness, and it creates the backbone to a lot of power metal, honestly, but definitely to Gloryhammer's signature sound. And so, like I said, I don't really have a lot to add on to that. The music, to me, feels like it's typically there to create the atmosphere and the feeling, not just for the narration parts, but also for the sung parts. The one time I think this deviates a little bit is during the chorus. Sure, the vocal melody, I think, steals the show there with being super catchy, but also the strings help embellish that. Playing alongside it, as I mentioned the first time through the chorus, there's a lot of texture layering going on here, which is sort of like harmony, which would be pitch layering, having a bunch of different pitches, creating your chord. Texture layering is having a bunch of different instruments playing the same thing, but you get all the different characteristics of them smashing together and creating this texture, this sonic mixture. So we actually hear a lot of that, of several instruments all playing along with the vocal line. And that goes also to more vocals. There is at least one other clean vocal singer in the vocal stack in the chorus, but we also have the choir that sings alongside it as well. And so there's just a lot of different sounds going on there at the same time, creating a lot of density to the song, making it feel very large and vast without having to write a bunch of different parts and a bunch of different layers. And that's another thing that kind of gives it what I think is an ease of listening. They could have easily went into more of a prog metal direction and used polyrhythm. Sorry. They could have used polyrhythm too, but I meant to bring up counterpoint of having multiple melodic lines. And at no point in this song do they ever decide to go into that direction. They also tend to stick with a bit more of a verse chorus structure. There are deviations from that. It is almost 10 minutes long. But we do have clear verses and clear choruses, and we finish the track on a chorus after a bridge that we also have a guitar solo in. So it is taking a bit more of the standard ideas and just manipulating them enough to get what they need out of it without moving too far from what makes the song super palatable. And I think that's one of the things that Gloryhammer does really well, is knowing just how far they need to get outside of the bubble of normal music writing. We'll call it that, modern, mainstream, palatable writing styles. Knowing how far they need to get out of it to achieve what they want and never overstepping. They don't ever really get too far away from that. And I think that's one of the things that led to a lot of their popularity. They're not totally mainstream, but they definitely capture a lot of that sound, and that creates a very palatable work of theirs that still feels a bit distinct from their contemporaries and, other bands who are doing this sound. Let me hit some lyrics on this one, and then we're going to wrap this one up. All right, I'm not going to get super deep into this. There are a lot of people and names being dropped, and I kind of get some of it, certainly more than if I hadn't have had any context for this, but it's the culmination of an entire album's worth of events and characters being introduced. So the general idea here, though, is that an evil wizard Zargathrax is on Earth, unlocking a chaos portal to the galactic nexus where he plans to take over the multiverse. And so we have Angus McFife the 13th wielding the Gloryhammer, which has a different name now than it did 13 ancestors ago with the original Angus McFife. This is so silly. I love it. And he is waging a battle above Mars in order to get to Earth and stop this dark wizard from opening this chaos portal. That's what this story is about. He also seems to be rallying forces on Earth, says, "Warriors of planet Earth, hear my raging cry, for mighty Dundee the demons will die." And so maybe there's a dual battle going on here, a spacefaring one above Mars trying to get to Earth, and also people on Earth fight. In fact, there is, because later on we'll hear about the dwarves attacking the cave that this evil wizard is in. And I really like that section. We'll get to that in a moment. Talks about battle cruisers going to space and conquering galaxies. This is what a chaos wizard wants. We have the Grand Master of the Space Knights of Krail, Ser Proletius, talking about how we need to trust in our sword and we'll win the battle. The Space Knights are the first to the fight, clashing with lasers and power of might. I mean, it's so stupid. It's so silly. And I think that's what I really love about it, is that it's taken so seriously. Like, there might be a little bit of tongue in cheek here where they know this is campy. We know this is campy. We're all in on it. But they don't undermine any of that. There's no jokes thrown in here. There's no, well, from what I can see at least, no pop culture elements thrown in here to sort of undermine it. This is a universe. And as silly as it is, it's taken seriously. Even if the language seems to be a bit, I guess silly would be the word too. It's certainly not a, you don't need a dictionary or a thesaurus to understand these lyrics. And that certainly brings the language down a little bit, and I would say puts it into like pulp sci-fi rather than like hard sci-fi. But even then, I think that's fine too. I think it goes along with this whole idea of like mechanical unicorns and stuff that show up elsewhere. I don't know if it was on this album, but I'm pretty sure we have heard a song called like The Land of the Unicorns or something, and they're robots, and I don't remember. Dude, it's like, it's campy. And that's, to me, is like the big draw of it. If I were to get into like a conceptual band, Gloryhammer might be the one I get into just because it's so low stakes. No, low stakes isn't even the right word. This is epic. This is vast. There's a lot of stakes here, but it's just, it's kind of dumb. And I love that. You know, I call it dumb with like a lot of love too. I'm certainly not talking down to it. Let's see, moving forward. Oh yeah, the astral dwarves of Aberdeen come in. They have crystal laser battle axes. And they dive in to the caves to fight Zargathrax, the dark sorcerer. And he says, "Pathetic dwarves, you're no match for my demon hordes. Let battle commence." And so the dwarves are singing this song. It's the rage, the cosmic rage of astral dwarves from Aberdeen. And the constant repetition to build the rage, the cosmic rage of astral dwarves. And it's just like, it reminds me of like the old school campy sci-fi movie trailers where like you have to like slowly build into the full sentence. And it's just, it captures that feeling so well. But it seems like the dwarves weren't enough. And Zagrethrax is about ready to prevail. There's an instrumental break, and Hootsman, the barbarian warrior of Unst, shows up. He's a cyborg powered by a neutron star. For centuries immortal, he will quest in time and space, but now he must sacrifice to save the human race. He decides that the only way to stop Zagrethrax, I don't know if that's, I can't see his name anymore. Zargathrax, I missed that first R. I need to see that word because that pronunciation is not sticking with me. The only way to defeat him, though, is to destroy the entire planet of Earth. That's the only way to make sure we get him. That's wild thinking, but sure, let's go with it. So Hootsman the Barbarian flies into Earth faster than a laser bullet and detonates his nuclear heart, destroying all of human life. It says, with a thunderous implosion, the earth was vaporized, tearing a dimensional rift in the heavens. Using his last shards of power, Zargathrax plunged through the space portal, vanishing into another reality. And so Angus McFife the 13th followed him into the wormhole, shouting for the eternal glory of Dundee. And that's where the song ends. Presumably next album picks up with these two figures continuing their unending fight in another world, another plane, another part of the multiverse. It is ridiculous. And I love it for that. I haven't even heard the rest of the story. And I'm like, yeah, I'm here for this. I enjoyed this little snippet despite it being the final part of an entire story. And it's still a cliffhanger for the next one. So, yeah, there's elements of concern in here of, I mentioned feeling lost. I wonder if that was around the time that they realized they would have to detonate the Earth to stop the wizard, which still didn't stop the wizard. Sort of a little bit of melancholy. We don't really have much sadness though, even when talking about the Earth being destroyed and the human, all human life being lost. We never really dip the energy down, kind of keep things light still throughout. So it's definitely something that seems to keep a bit of a lighter tone, even when going for some apocalyptic story beats. But generally speaking, this all feels very epic. I mean, it's multi-planet warfare. How much more epic can you get than that? And the music matches a lot of that feeling. So, as usual, Gloryhammer's music, they know what they're doing, and they do it well. These are my thoughts, though. Gloryhammer's Apocalypse 1992. Let me know what you thought of this track. If there's anything that stood out to you, anything that you would like to add on to what I said or correct me on, maybe you have your own opinion or perspective on this track, please put all of that and any other thoughts you have down into the comments section. Above that, in the description box, you'll find a link to Linktree. Takes you here. You can find links to my music, ways to support the channel, a link to the Discord server, and so much more. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three of those. All right, that wraps it up for this one. I'll be back tomorrow, though, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UTC, as usual. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.